got an invitation through the mail. Your presence requested this evening. It's formal, a top hat, a white tie, and tails. Nothing now could take the wind out of my sails. Because I'm invited to step out this evening with top hat, white tie, and tails. I'm putting on my top hat, tying up my white tie, brushing off my tails. I'm doing up my shirt front, putting in the shirt studs, polishing my nails. I'm stepping out, my dear, to breathe an atmosphere that simply reeks with class. And I trust that you'll excuse my dust when I step on the gas. For I'll be there, putting down my top hat, mussing up my white tie, dancing in my tails. I'm stepping out, my dear, to breathe an atmosphere that simply reeks with class. And I trust that you'll excuse my dust when I step on the gas. For I'll be there, putting down my top hat, mussing up my white tie, dancing in my tails.
Right? He showed up at my house in 1957, right out of medical school. He became my hero. Still is, for that matter. But he was a guy between my dad and myself in age, and he was still fun. The old man was strict, you know what I'm saying? He was a lot of fun. I had no idea until later I found out that he's one of the smartest people in the world. He is quite an individual. I don't need to run down all of his credentials because that would take a real long time and probably embarrass him. But after leaving Montchast, he went to help him set up the medical school in Davis. The general practice was the thing he wanted to do, and he got that from you-know-who. Right? But he came and stayed at our house and wanted to find out what it would be like to be a small-town doctor. And he lived with us for 2 weeks, and I swear he and I both think it was 6 months. Because he learned how to pour concrete, he learned how to catch trout, he learned how to barbecue, and this was all while he was learning how to practice medicine as well. Anyway, John, I'd like you to come up and tell everybody what you know about Dr. Bill.
Thank you, Bruce. Have we got a couple hours here? If we're going to talk about everything I know about Bill. Well, first of all, this is the second celebration of life that I've been to of one Joseph W. Bill Reynolds. When he turned 65, how many people were here in his living wake when he turned 65? Okay. Well, a few hands go up. That's the best party I've ever been to. But as we know, Bill didn't spend a lot of time in church. Well, he got married in church. But he wanted a living wake while he was still alive. So here was this great party, and everyone had a great time, and people from all over his own life were here, who knew him as a school kid in Dunsmuir, and then in medical school, and then in the Army, and then, you know, all the different stages. So that was really great. And he got roasted. And we all learned quite a bit too. So that was fun. So this is the second celebration. And I've always thought that Bill Reynolds lived at least 7 lives, maybe 9, in his 94 years. And so, because he was always doing something more, and it was always interesting too. So anyhow, he deserves another celebration today. And I hope, Bill, you're here to watch. So, yeah, I spent 2 weeks here in 1957. I was at UC San Francisco in medical school, and I wanted to see what rural practice was like as a family physician. And I went down to an office in San Francisco, and they pulled out files, and here's this Dunsmuir guy, and they said he was pretty good, so that's why I came. So yeah, 2 weeks, it seemed like 6 months, and we poured a lot of concrete, but I'm sure that concrete is still there. And it was actually great, though he taught me a few things that I later found weren't quite so true. He showed me one situation where here was a patient he had delivered 2 or 3 times, and she was now in labor, but it was just so smooth and not one medication, and you know, it was just so easy that I thought obstetrics would be easy. And later on I found it wasn't quite that easy. Anyhow, I think Bill was a Renaissance man. He could do lots of things, often in the same day. He ranged from building things to fixing things to photography to, you know, to breaking things, to computers, to music. He was in the band. He was always doing more things. He gardened and hybrided, whatever the verb is, things, and woodworking, and he collected stuff. There was always more stuff in the shed or around the place.
You want some stuff?
No, don't need any stuff. So anyhow, he had a lot of qualities. Number one, I think, is zest for life. And he would charge into things. He was kind of an Eagle Scout, you probably know. But he never gave up being an Eagle Scout. So he was always doing something for someone else. And not taking credit for it. He got good at everything he tried. And he had this wry humor, which all of you have been the targets of this wry humor, right? Which kind of went straight at you. Zinger here, zinger there, and usually right on. He had a lot of insight about the ironies of life, I've always thought. But he always still came up with a positive attitude, didn't put him down. So he was a realist. He and I are about the same place on church. In our last conversation, I asked him to tell me where he went, you know, and I was waiting to hear, and he hasn't told me yet. But anyhow, I think, well, again, he didn't teach me everything either. When we were here in Mount Shasta, we lived out in the Brown Shasta, and we had a half mile of dirt road to plow, and he taught me how to snow plow, he said. And I had a Jeep pickup and a blade, and had a lot of fun plowing, but one day, I guess I didn't get it all hooked up under the truck quite right, and I was really moving along there by that little dam, and the plow came off and I ran over it and pulled my gas tank, all the gas was on the road. And so I've always complained that Bill didn't teach me that stuff. So then, he did teach me quite a bit of stuff though, still. And I'll never forget being at Bill and Helen's wedding, and your brother coming down the aisle with his horns on. That was a great wedding. And Helen, you have done just great with Bill. You extended his life, made it much more meaningful, and he was lucky. So, lots of great memories. I remember we climbed Mount Shasta together with our kids, and Bruce, you were there with your friend Wayne, and Bill was 47, and he got there. We complained a bit because you were so far ahead. And Jim Nile was with us, I think, and he was always saying, just around the corner or something like that. Which after a while, you just didn't believe because if someone was way the heck out there. Anyhow, lots of good memories. And we flew a lot together. Bill and I have flown for a lot of years, and we flew together a whole lot. I remember one flight we went down to Baja to fish, and we had a club Cessna 182, and Bill and two others and me were in this airplane, and we went down to Bahia de las Palmas and fished, and we caught one fish. I didn't, Bill didn't, but here's one fish, which now we're a full airplane and we're coming back on a hot day in July, and we had to cross over the Sea Cortez to Hermosillo, and we had this big fish. It was cut in two now. It's in the baggage compartment, and it's a hot day now. So anyhow, Bill was in the back seat and starting to complain. And it was getting pretty sniffy. And anyhow, they don't fight forest fires in Baja, and there weren't any good instruments or nav aids, and we had rough directions. We were going to fly over the Sierra Madre and find Chihuahua. And anyhow, Floyd Gleek, a pharmacist in Dunsmuir, was in the right seat. He was my advisor, and but all we saw was smoke, and the gas gauges were coming down, and Bill's sitting here, and he's sitting up higher in the back seat all the time, and the fish is getting even better. The short of it is, we found Chihuahua, but with only 2 gallons to spare, and the fish. Oh, the later part of that story was we took the fish to a taxidermist in Chihuahua, and I forget who caught the fish, but it wasn't Bill or me. But yeah, for $100 they'd really have a good job of that. Well, we never got the fish back. Anyhow, Bill was wide awake on that trip, and so yeah, lots of memories. Again, I think to sum up 9 lives in one, I think Bill was a model of medical professionalism as a physician. He remained an Eagle Scout in the best sense of the word. He was a great American. He was a great friend. And I celebrate him.
far through it. Is there anyone else who feels like they have something real important that they want to say about my dad? Because he wants to hear it. Tim. I don't know who knows Timothy Silas.
I apologize ahead of time for my emotions because I know I'm going to have some. We are blessed to have known and respected and loved this fine man we honor today. Dr. Reynolds was one of the first people that Dr. Meredith introduced me to after my family arrived in Dunsmuir in the early 80s. In his bubbly way, Dr. Reynolds asked if we wanted the 50-cent tour of the streets of Dunsmuir or the $5 tour to know the people in town. And my wife Janice and I signed on for the whole tamale. And that started a valued friendship for life. And that is the legacy, I think, of Dr. Reynolds. A gentle, truthful man, never promoting himself. He considered people he met, especially patients, as friends, and friends as family. We spoke often about true Christian attitudes and treatment of our fellow man and the unselfish responsibility that we doctors have for our patients. We agreed times are changing, but that attitude and the responsibility should not. Over the last few years, I spent most Monday evenings at the Reynolds home in Mount Shasta, sharing our love for gardening, flowers, and photography. For many years, Dr. Reynolds and many other pillars, such as Joe Kelby, Dick Bliss, Paul McKinley, Jim and B. Cottinger, Joanne Smith, and others who have gone on now, and some still living, John Smith in Alaska, and Serge and Nancy Killingsworth here in Mount Shasta. We met monthly as the Dunsmuir Photo Club. Proudly, we shared results of our photographic efforts from camera to darkroom to print, critiquing and learning better ways to capture our three-dimensional world into a printed photograph. Dr. Reynolds was an expert photographer, darkroom master, and looked at the world with a professional photographer's eye for composition. He was always imagining just how to capture that light. He loved to teach others how, and loved to learn something new. After I had worked with strict color darkroom and printing techniques, he helped me learn black and white conventional darkroom activities, which was totally backwards. But he proved to me that the true test of a photographer's ability is creating the perfect black and white print. He boldly transitioned from film to digital cameras, and I introduced him to the digital Lightroom program on my Windows laptop and its similar capabilities to traditional darkroom techniques. He immediately ordered the program, and then we both learned how to use it on his Mac. Some Mondays I would walk into his home to the comment, "Help, I've really done my computer in this time." And after some minor glitch was fixed, he would show me the bird, squirrel, or flower, whether an orchid or one of his favorites he called the yellow by the rhoda, that he had photographed and how much fun he had had that week working in Lightroom. We agreed it doesn't really matter what it's called. It's hard to go wrong photographing the perfection of nature. Our last photo outing was 7 hours together at the side of Everett Memorial Highway. on Mount Shasta, watching and photographing the solar eclipse. We are all blessed to have known this fine man. And Dr. Reynolds was blessed too, with his wonderful family, Bobby and their children and grandchildren, and Helen. At 88 years old, he and Helen started 6 wonderful years he treasured together. And he was lovingly and immaculately cared for to his final breath. On the Monday evening before his passing, fully alert, but weaker each time I saw him. After we had browsed through a slideshow of favorite photos on my laptop, as I bid him farewell, my last words to him were, "I'll see you next Monday, or if not, I'll see you in heaven. I miss you."
Wasn't this emotional, you guys? And you know it's true. Anyway, he had that effect on a lot of people. Is there anybody else who there's somebody else right there. Somebody I've known since I was pretty young. Jim.
I don't have anything planned, but I did learn something new today. I came to the old hospital in Mount Shasta in 1957, and Dr. Reynolds immediately became one of my favorite persons, not only as a physician, but as an individual person. He was just beyond compare. And today what I learned new, after I'd been there for a few years, we had a number of new doctors come in, including Dr. Guyman. And every time Dr. Bill and I got together, he always kept me informed about Dr. Guyman up in Washington and whatever he was. But I never knew that you came and learned the rural life before you were out of medical school. That was something very interesting. But anyway, when Janet and my children were young, Dr. Bill always invited us to come down to his pool at Little Castle Creek to celebrate birthdays. That was something very special. But the other thing that was kind of amazing, our kids were on swim team, and every year at the end of the season, Crescent City would invite us over for a dual swim meet. Anyway, I was in the lab one day and I was complaining about my station wagon not being very reliable, and Dr. Reynolds happened to come in and heard that, and we were due to go over to Crescent City, and he says, "You take my Jeep." He had bought a Jeep the week before, and I said, "You know, I can't do that." He said, "Oh yes you can." He says, "It's fully insured." So anyway, we're on our way over to Crescent City. We go up, we get to Grants Pass, and for some reason or another, we have to stop and get the battery charged on this nice new Jeep. Well, then we're going down, I don't know how many of you have been down Old 199 down to Crescent City, which has all kinds of turns, and we're coming down there, and all of a sudden, all this smoke starts to come out of the front of it. And I pulled over to a wide spot and says, "Everybody out of the car." Anyway, we found out that what happened, we had put a Kleenex box down between the seats, and we had pushed the lever for his snowplow attachment. And we blew all of the seals on that. And when we came back, I said, "You know, get this fixed and let me know, because I'll pay for it." He would never let me know how much he paid to have that done. I want to tell you that I've never had a better friend, and about a month before he passed away, I finally got a chance to bring him upstairs here for a lunch that we had together, and that was just one of the most special things. Thank you, Bruce.
Before we go any further, I want to acknowledge Mark Ostrom over here, who's the one who's putting all these images together. This is no mean feat. I'm not sure how you're doing this, but when John's talking, there's pictures of John up there? You got kind of a magic touch.
I'm a USB psychic.
Oh, you're a psychic. Okay, well, great job. Great job. And anyone else?
Bruce, I'd like to say something.
Oh, your turn's coming, Spence.
Okay.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you very much. Well, folks, my name is Phil Ward, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you to honor such a wonderful gentleman. Believe it or not, I've known Bill for about 80 years. And the reason I say that is because I was in the second grade in Dunsmuir in 1932, and Bill was either in the 7th or 8th grade. I don't remember exactly. But I knew him, not well, but I knew of him, and of course all of his buddies. And then we renewed acquaintances when Barbara and I moved back to Mount Shasta in 1980. And we became very good friends. And we knew John Guyman at that time too, which was a pleasure to know. But Bill was a wonderful man, as you all know. He was a practical jokester. He was upbeat continuously. When Barb and I had our ranch in 1980, we had a large vegetable garden, and we always had trouble with tomatoes developing properly because it would always turn cold about the time they were supposed to be in bloom or actually get ripe. And Bill knew this. So he liked to tease me, so he would call me on the phone in early spring and say, "Phil, how are your tomatoes?" And I would say, "Well, Bill, you know very well they're still green and on the vine." He said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." He said, "My tomatoes are beautiful and red, and I'm ready to pick them today. So eat your heart out, Phil." Then, one time when Bobby and Bill were in their prime, they invited, and also Richard, they invited Barbara and me to one of the most scrumptious dinners we've ever had. I think it was maybe a Thai dinner, wasn't it, Richard?
Could be.
All right. And it was one of the most magnificent dinners that Barbara and I have ever had. And they just outdid themselves to please us and to feed us, and it was really a glorious time. The other thing I remember about Bill was in 1980, we started a community band because Mount Shasta had not had a community band for the 4th of July parade for years. And so Barbara and I put our heads together, and we got enough people together to start a little band to be in the parade. And Bill was one of those. He came with his saxophone in all his glory and was on the float with us and just had a great time. He was something else. He and Sid Fisher, his old buddy. And I just remember Bill so well. He was such a great man, and he's enriched not only my life, but I'm sure yours too. So Bill, God bless you wherever you are. We love you and Ellen so much. I'm sorry, one thing I wanted to say, and that was that I agree that he was a tremendous photographer. In about 1982, I was the recipient of a beautiful little purebred golden retriever pup. And I love golden retrievers. And I was tickled to death with it. And of course I had to show it off a little bit, so I took him down to South Dunsmuir to show Bill and Bobby. Well, Bill would have nothing to do except to take my picture with the dog. And this is a picture that he took of my dog and me in 1982. And I treasure it more than anything I have.
Okay, Spence, you're up, buddy. Thank you very much. Thanks for bringing that picture out, too. I hope you don't break it. The across the street neighbor.
Yeah. I've only known Bill for 6 years, since he and Helen got married. Helen was my neighbor, lives across the street. And when they got married, the first time I saw Bill, here was an elderly gentleman, but he walked like his pants were on fire. He was going over the mountains at 90 miles an hour, and I thought, what is this guy? And so Helen introduced us, and we became very good friends. And I'd go over there for coffee at 3:30 several times a week. And he was very curious, so I'd always look at about page 6 or page 8 of the newspaper to find some obscure story about something, and I'd think, okay, I'm going to get him on this one. Because every morning he got up, got on his computer, read the New York Times, read the Searchlight News. So every day when I'd go over there, I'd say, well, I read in the paper where something happened, and he goes, yes, I read that too. We'd have a discussion for an hour about this, and I never was able to trip him up. He was always right on top of everything, and he knew what the newest gadget when it came to photography or computers. Amazon was his lifeline to the world. If something came from Amazon, always to update him to the technology, whatever was around. And I remember Tim, when the eclipse came, he worked for a week to try to jerry rig some kind of thing so he could take a picture of the sun. And it didn't work out. It didn't take a picture. It was blurry. But he enjoyed so much that week of trying to figure out how to take a picture of the eclipse of the sun and catch it, that I don't even think it deterred him much when it did turn out. It was mainly, just trying to figure out how to make it work. And he was just a delight. I think in another world he was a cement mason. He loved cement. And I put a patio in, and the day the cement truck came, here came Bill. So we fixed a couple chairs, and he and my wife Dana sat there. And it was better for him than watching a full-length movie. He just loved to watch cement masons work and think about the old days when he used to go every Wednesday, I think he used to tell me. It was cement day when he was practicing, and he'd close down his practice and go work and do some cement work. So, he was, most of us, maybe we run at 90% or 85%, but we don't try all the time. We're on coast some of the time. Not Bill. Bill was 100%. And for that, I'm very grateful, because you don't meet many people that are trying hard all the time to be the best they can be. And he was. And I miss him greatly.
Mark knew him a little bit, I think. Mark was the man who got him out of cyberspace. The old man hung out in cyberspace and he was captured. He was trapped in cyberspace. That's the guy who got him out of cyberspace.
Now the rest of the story. I'm 59 and I've known Bill since I was 1. He was my childhood doctor for many years, and at that point in time I really hated the guy. I just didn't want to see him, didn't think anything he had to say was funny, and it didn't work out. Your family and our family were friends, and one of the activities that they enjoyed together was hunting. And so throughout my childhood, we'd go together down to Willows area and do pheasant hunting. And when you pheasant hunt, you spread out, you walk hopefully in a wooded area, and when a bird comes up, you follow it with a shotgun and you shoot. And I was on one side of a canal, and he was on the other side, a dry canal. And we heard a pheasant come up. And boy, he locked onto it. Zoop, and bam, he killed the bird all right, and he shot me. Right in the face with number 7 dove shot. Dick Cheney and I have a lot. So, those being the pre-lawyer days, Bill just dropped his gun, and I yelled out an obscenity at him. All that childhood vengeance came out at once. And he ran to the car, got his little black bag, came over, took some tweezers and pulled out the BBs, put a little methylate on them, and off we went hunting again for the rest of the day. That's pretty much the last time I saw Bill for a very long time. I knew he was friends with our family, but we lived in Reading and he lived up here. And back in the 80s, my mom decided to buy a Macintosh computer, and at that time, Bill had a Macintosh computer. So they kind of reestablished the friendship, and he gave her a lot of stolen software. He can't be prosecuted now. But had a ball teaching her how to run the thing and whatnot, and answering all of her questions. And in 1996, my father died, and of course, the second person after my mom called me was to call Doc Reynolds. He was that important in her life, and especially since her own mom and dad had already passed on. When she died in 2005, he came to the funeral, and we talked a little bit, and I came home and I thought, I really want to know this guy, because he knows how to take good pictures, and I can learn from him, and maybe put him on a business someday. So we established a little bit of a friendship, and then he decided to buy a new computer, and I was very instrumental in that purchase, advising him to buy a Mac, which is my specialty, and setting him up, and I had a ball with him. And then he said, now we want to move my pictures over. 8,000 pictures. And that's only in the digital era. Okay, the digital era started what, 6, 7, 8 years ago, maybe tops 10. So he still has thousands and thousands of pictures that aren't in here. Rooms full, Bruce says. And we spent a good deal of time together. One of the things that he told me a lot of stories. And there was a group of men, and I believe it was the Boy Scouts. I believe it was the group of Eagle Scouts, and they would meet every year. And wasn't there a bottle of brandy
That could have been.
that went along? And the stipulation was that the last guy alive got to drink the brandy. And during the last couple of years, his last friend in that group passed away. And I asked him if he was going to drink the brandy, and he said, I couldn't touch it, he said, but I'll keep it forever. And it's somewhere in your house, I'm sure. There you go. I'm a great historian, and I was able to wrangle out of Bill stories that no one else was about the war. He was a recipient of a Silver Star. He was a prisoner of war in a German occupation. He at one point was in a subterranean room with a set of windows along the street level. And he was gazing out the windows, and there was a German soldier who needed attention, medical attention.
Yes, ma'am.
And of course, Bill being Bill, he bent over to help the man. And at that minute, a machine gun strafed right through the window, right where his head had been. So he slipped through that one pretty well. He was in the first group of soldiers to walk into Dachau concentration camp. And with his little brownie camera, he took photographs, which he developed in the town square and never printed. And he was able, actually by himself, with some instruction that I gave him, to scan those images in. And he never showed anyone, he never talked about them, but they're some of the most horrific images I can imagine. And to have had that in his heart all those years, and to have had the sunny disposition, as John said, the joy for life. Bruce said one day that the why is the sky blue, why is the grass green curiosity that and Bill just had forever until his last day. He had that. He did have a horrendous series of things happen during the war, but he was I think he was raised right. He was raised in a good town, and he had a deep moral fiber that just carried him. I had met a woman that I enjoyed dating, and after a long lifetime of being a single person, and that was the biggest joy in his life. Was that, and he badgered me. He said, "Don't you mess this up. You be nice to her." And we'd go over there, and then on the way out to the car, he'd say, "You're doing a bad job. You didn't let her talk. You didn't talk to her. You just talked to me." So I appreciate the advice. And one of the things that I have to say about Doc is 30 feet from his bed, he had all of the medicines that would have been required to put himself out of misery. And yet his courage and strength is an example to all of us, because he endured, because he wanted to be with his family and with Helen until the last possible moment. And he would not give up. He fought until the very last day. And I wish it had been easier the last few days, but as Bruce said earlier, 5 weeks of misery out of 94 years of life isn't too bad. So thank you, Bill, for all you've given everyone, and certainly me. And wherever you are, I hope it's good. I hope you're happy.
And that from a guy who he shot. That's the bedside manner I've ever heard of. Is anybody else out there? Oh, come up here. This is just going to go on and on. I'm finding out a bunch of new stuff myself.
I'm glad there's a doctor in the room because my heart is beating. I'm Myra. Floyd is my maiden name. And I said to my oldest sister, Bonnie, that I wanted to come to Dr. Reynolds' services to talk. And she said, "Oh God, Myra, there's going to be so many people talking. Why would you want to do that?" And I said, "Because my mother's story is the most important." And it is, because there was 8 kids in my family, and we grew up in Dunsmuir and Cascella. My father was a logger, and he didn't make a whole lot of money. Then back in the about the middle of the 70s, my mother got cancer, and he took care of her. And she went, in and out of the hospital, and he was there by her side the whole time. And he had delivered 4 of us, but he had claimed that he delivered all 8 kids. But he really did claim all of us. And after my mother died, my dad didn't make a lot of money. He told my oldest sister that your father will not be burdened with these bills. And he never sent one bill. He took care of the hospital bill. He took care of all the bills. He never sent us a bill for $1. And he never brought it up again, not once. And I never really knew that story till I got much older. And I always wanted to tell him thank you, but we never did. And like I said, he would probably be embarrassed if we ever brought it up again. But he was a really good guy, and I think he paid the bill. He was probably worried that he'd have to take us all in if he didn't take it. Honestly, because I think we thought he was like our surrogate father or something. He was in our life so much, he was there all the time. And but thank you, Dr. Reynolds. And he's probably in trouble for sneaking into the billing department and shredding all the documents. So, but I have another quick little story. My oldest sister lives down on the river in Dunsmuir, and she got a new neighbor, and one day Dr. Reynolds parked in her driveway, and he got all of his fishing gear out, and he was going down to the river to go fishing, and her new neighbor came out and said, "You can't park in that driveway." And he said, "I've been taking care of this family my whole life, and I'll park in this driveway anytime I want." And he got all his fishing gear, and he went down to the river, and then of course later on, my sister's new neighbor came home and said, this guy came out and said he can park here in your driveway anytime I want, and he was from the city, so I think he thought he was the new neighborhood bulldog, to watch everybody's driveway. And my sister said, "That man can park in my driveway and go fishing anytime he wants." And he did whenever he wanted to. He could do that, so thank you.
might not be aware of this, but about 4 o'clock, I'm going fishing at Canterloop to catch a fish. So we got to widen this up. One of the things that I learned from Pop, along with a whole bunch of other stuff, was how to catch trout. And I started beating him when I was about a senior in high school, and it's pissed him off ever since. So I think I'm going to go back down there this evening and catch one and throw it back in the river, just because I can. But this is very heartwarming to see everybody out here. People I haven't seen in years, real wonderful surprises, people I haven't seen forever. And does anybody else have anything they need to get up here? It's not 4 o'clock yet.
You gotta perform.
Well, there's that, but that's going to be quick. Take my word for it.
I'm not good at speaking in front of people. Dr. Reynolds was my OB doctor, and our youngest daughter, when she was 17 months old, kidneys failed. Only we didn't know what was wrong with her. And he put her in the Mount Shasta Hospital, and she was there for 4 days, 4 nights, and we brought her home. And when I got her home, I knew there was still something wrong, so I called him, and he came right down. And he thought she had spinal meningitis. So he sent her to Reading, and Dr. Stanford in Reading happened to be the pediatrician that took her. And they did all kinds of tests on her, and we got there at 7:30 in the evening, and by 10:30 they were coming out saying that her kidneys were not functioning, and she was on her way to Stanford. It was November, very foggy, so I rode in the ambulance with her, and she spent 4 weeks at Stanford. And the body is a marvelous thing. Things can stop, and on their own they can start in again. And this is what happened with her. So when we came home in January, I had to take her up there, and he said, "Why didn't you call me? Why didn't somebody call me and let me know what was going on?" And I never thought about it. I always felt guilty. But I always praised him and thanked him, because he was one doctor that, when he didn't know what was wrong, he admitted it, and he sent her on. But he took care of her. She's 51 years old now and has 2 children of her own. And for years we commuted back and forth to Palo Alto. And I don't know how many of those doctors down there, when they would see her, would say, "You don't know how lucky you are that she's here." But I knew, because Dr. Reynolds was there taking care of her, he was one of the reasons why I still have her.
There's a million of these doctor stories, but and I will tell you that Pop got more invested in your medical situations than he did in what I was doing, unless I messed up. And then he got invested in what I was doing. But it is an amazing thing. I practice dentistry, and I could not possibly share that much of myself and still remain sane. So I don't know how he did it.
Hi, my name is Morris Eagle, and I work at the hospital. Helen asked me to speak. And also in Bill's and Helen's neighbor at a next dispenser. And I'll tell you a couple stories on Will. But first of all, he was part of the foundation of our hospital, without question. He helped make it what it is today. It's an excellent hospital. But Bill truly built it up. When he walked in the hospital, we all look forward to seeing him. He was a class act. As a retired physician, he'd come in and get prescriptions from us. And people stopped what they were doing all the time to walk over and shake his hand in gratitude. for everything he had done for so many people in the community. I was proud to know Bill. And he always talked about how many people he delivered. He'd say, I delivered that person. And I'd ask him sometimes, some said yes, some said, no, I think you forgot. But he was great, and I want to tell you, he was a founding father of our healthcare in South Siskiyou County, and I was proud to know him. Now as his neighbor, that was really a lot of fun. I have a lot of windows in front of my house, so I got to see a lot of things. When he first moved there, I'd see a 90-year-old man running down the street after a big black dog. Got away again. I think my favorite time that I saw him, I looked out the front window, and there are my two grandkids, and they're about 8 and 5, and they're having a snowball fight with Bill. And he's in his 90s. That was typical of him, a zest for life and a love for life. Then one day, Spencer and I were over there, and we're helping stack some wood for him. He needed to have moved. And he's trying to help us. Well, this was last year, so really elderly person at that point. And every once in a while, he'd stop, he'd kind of grab his chest a little bit, and I go, Bill, what's going on? He said, oh, it's nothing, just a little angina. I go, oh, no. I said, Bill, I don't want you to stop right here. You know, to get you a chair. No, I just rest a little bit, get some more wood, and bring it over. That's how he was and everything. A zest for life, a kind, caring person who loved people. I think it's a privilege for all of us to know such a man. Thank you.
Something slip your mind, yeah?
We all talk about Bill's zest for life, but there's kind of a funny story. He and I went over to the Mount Shasta Cemetery where I have relatives buried. And we wanted to find out where they were because I had no record of their location. So we went in and found a nice young lady who worked there. And she led us into a nice office room with couches and whatnot, and sat us down, and she went and got the registry books. And so while she's looking, Bill looks around the room and he says, 75, maybe 80. 80, probably 80 autopsies I did right here in this room. And the girl just went, and he says, yeah, there's a drain over there on the
This could go on and on and on. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for showing up, and please make sure you talk to all your old friends, because there's probably a lot of people you haven't seen for a long time here. We're not kicking you out by any means, but we're going to probably downsize the formal program. I want to thank everybody for coming, and Pop is probably watching. Helen, do you want to cuss at you? I mean, you want to say something to Pop? But by the way, I have to tell you a funny story about Auntie Helen, who I've known since I was born. After my mom passed away, my dad was just a pile. He was useless. He was just ruined. And he sat around. He wouldn't even turn the lights on in the house. He'd sit there and he'd have one light bulb on. And we're going, this is not going to work. You know, where did Pop go? And what did you do with it? You know? And the way I hear this is he ran into this lovely lady who he's known since essentially the day you were born. You came back from a Boy Scout thing and they couldn't go in the house because somebody was being born. And you looked at him and you said the same thing. Bill, you look awful. So she took him home, made him a cup of coffee, and he knows a good thing when he sees it.
Well, I am a stubborn Norwegian, and he found that out shortly. But I just want to thank you all for coming. You're all his friends. And by the way, how many of you, just put your hands up, how many of you here did he deliver? Oh my, yes. Oh yes.
Got a married couple here.
He's so happy. Oh, that's great. Because he was very proud that he could do that. That he brought 1,500 of you into this world. And I don't know just how we're going to do this. This is, what's the word I want? I always forget the words. It's not formal. It's informal, okay. And we wanted to have a toast to Bill's life. We have champagne poured over there, but we're not quite sure how it's going to get to anyone. So, as we have some refreshments coming, will you just raise your hands and let's say, great, great life, Bill Reynolds. We love you, and we'll never forget you.
Yes, it's appropriate to drink champagne at Pop's memorial.
Bill always enjoyed having Bruce and Richard play their guitars. That was a foregone conclusion. Whenever Bruce came, they came to the house, and he taped it a lot. So I asked them if they'd please do this, and they said they would. They don't profess to be professional at it, they just have a wonderful time.
Nice move. One more.
To quote my dad, after he was married to Helen for a little while, he said, "You can tell a Norwegian, but you can't tell him much." Well, she scratched out, "You can't tell her much." Yeah, you got that right. Anyway, thank you all for coming, and by all means, get some champagne if you want.
And Bruce and Richard.